Hello, Melissa, and welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Oh, I'm great. I'm delighted to be here. Thanks for having me, Avish.
Well, I am super excited to have you here, and you win a prize because you are my first repeat guest.
Oh,
Yeah, I've had a few people who we've talked about. Oh, come on back on at some point. But the timing because you have just released a new book, so we're here to talk about that. And so, welcome back. How have you been?
well, thank you. Well, as you might imagine, have been very busy
Mm-hmm.
because, as you very well know, writing and then launching a book, it's a lot of work. And
Yes.
I'm kind of tired.
Yeah, I know that feeling. And just real quick, I'll get into kind of your bio in a second here, but I don't know if you're like me, but the launching and promoting the book is a whole like separate job, and
Oh
there's
my
a point
God.
where when you finally get the book done, like written and signed off on, layout, everything, you just kind of want to be done,
Yep.
but then
And
you're
you're
like, oh
not.
no, now
You're
the hard
not.
work
It's like,
begins.
yeah, exactly. Now the hard work begins because the launch is its own enormous project. And guess what? That is the part that I am most challenged by, let's say, because project management is, I can do it, but it's not my
Yes.
favorite thing.
Well, I understand that. I know you can do it. You're a creative by background and training, but obviously you've bridged that into a lot of stuff for business. So I know you can do it, but I'm like you, where it's like, yeah, I can do it, but the writing was the fun part. Although the writing
Yeah.
also was painful at times. Um,
Yeah, absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
and I want to get into the whole, some of the process and a lot of what's in the book. But before we do that, for people who don't know you and maybe who didn't catch you the first time you were here, could you give us the 1 minute sort of who you are and what you do?
Yes, I am Melissa Dinwiddie. My business is called Creative Sandbox Solutions. I work with leaders who have been given an innovation mandate and they think, now what? How am I supposed to create innovation in my organization? They really have no idea what to do. So I go in and I help them take innovation, which they have as a value in their organization, and I help them turn it into a practice.
Mm-hmm.
And I do that through really similar to you, play-based methods and integrating really micro actions. So, similar to my book, which is based on these 52 micro experiments, I don't require them to pull their team away from day-to-day operations through, you know, day long or weekend long, week long retreats, which shuts down the entire team
Mm-hmm.
or organization and operations stop. I help them learn how to integrate innovation into their day-to-day and week-to-week workflow.
Got it. And I definitely want to get into all of that. And I love the idea of the micro experiments. It's a very cool approach. Before we get into that, you have a very, while you work a lot in corporate and with businesses and things, you have a very robust creative background, both in terms of training and performance, which I think is very relevant to what we're going to talk about here today. So could you just kind of share some of the highlights of that background?
Yeah, I like to think of my sort of career path as I've been a bit of a ball and a pinball machine. I
Mm.
trained as a dancer at Juilliard. I The only reason that I didn't end up in a dance career is that I got injured very young,
Mm.
and I ended up kind of falling backwards into a career as a professional visual artist. And I made my living as a visual artist in Silicon Valley for 15 years.
Mm.
On the side, I had a little side hustle as a jazz singer,
Oh.
performed and toured as a jazz singer-songwriter. And I am also a performing improviser, and I still do musical improv on the side. So I have a very wide and varied creative background, which I bring to the work that I do with teams because, as you know, the same things that we bring to creative skills, creative life, improv, art, these are the same skills that teams and leaders need in order to innovate, in order to do the things that leadership and innovation require. Listening,
Hmm.
creativity, all of these skills that we develop as artists, as improvisers, all the different performing arts or visual arts, the skills that we need to develop in order to become, to master the various different creative arts. These are actually the same skills that we need to develop as leaders.
Hmm. Yeah, or at least the skills that we should develop as leaders,
Yes,
even though
yes,
they're
exactly.
often forgotten or downplayed. Well, I know there's a whole kind of the story and experience about how you transitioned, how you got into that, but I'm pretty sure we talked about that last time.
I
So I'm going
think
to
we
link
probably
to
did.
our first interview in the show notes so we can kind of just jump right in right now to the meat of what you're up to now. So you've got this book out, Innovation at Work, and I read it. It's great. I reviewed it for you as well. Um, and rather than me, you touched upon a little bit about how it's like micro experiments. Um, but could you give us the overview of sort of what the book is all about? And it's it's more than it's like different than the book per se. You know, like it's not like, oh, I'm going to read from page A to Z. And what was your kind of thought process in putting it together this way?
Yeah, I actually, okay, so here's actually what happened, Avish. I was thinking to myself, what is the book that I can write, that I can put out there that is going to be most useful to my ideal client? And I didn't actually realize this until after I wrote the book, but after I wrote the book, I remembered, it's very sad that this didn't go into the book, but I remembered that I had a conversation with a tech leader, a local tech leader. It was just a market research conversation. It wasn't a sales call. And I remember asking them, uh, what programs have you done that were useful to you? And they said, there was a leadership training that we did that worked pretty well. And what I really liked about it was it was very lightweight. It was only 4 sessions. They were 1 hour each. And I thought, dang, that's not a lot of contact time.
Yeah.
And as a applied improv practitioner, as somebody who's, used to being hired to go in to spend, a full day or multiple full days over, several weeks
Hmm.
with a team, with an organization, I'm thinking, wow, that's really different from how I typically work, right? And then I said, okay, if you were to wave a magic wand and you had the ideal program that delivered exactly what you needed, what would that look like? And this leader said we would be able to download skills like Neo in the Matrix. And I thought, oh, I can't do that. I'd be a zillionaire if I could, but what would be the next best thing? And I realized that my book is the next best thing.
Hmm.
If how could I deliver something that would enable people to to have the kind of transformation that they want without pulling them away from operations? And so this concept of micro experiments, that is exactly what I'm trying to help leaders and organizations have. So so that's what the book is attempting to deliver. It's like the next best thing to downloading skills like Neo in the Matrix.
Hmm.
So the the book is like the 5 minute solution, the 20-minute solution. It's not quite the Neo download, but it's the next best thing. So it's this concept of these small experiments that they feel like creative play,
Hmm.
but they function like business strategy. These 5 minute to 20 minute, a few of them are slightly longer, these creative challenges that unlock weeks of forward momentum. And the book is for directors, for VPs. They might be leading innovation, they might be leading product, they might be leading cross-functional teams, especially those folks who are really tired of what I call innovation theater.
Hmm.
They're really craving practical tools that actually work inside real world constraints. And they don't want to pull their team away from operations. They want to be able to take that value of innovation and turn it into a practice. And they understand that in order to do that, they're going to have to uh, they're going to have to build that practice. And the way to do that is by integrating small little actions. I call them micro experiments on a regular basis. And so I give them this guidebook, this toolkit, and it's not just the 52 micro experiments. You could do one a week for, 52 weeks over
Mm-hmm.
the course of a year, but it's also a whole series of protocols that combines the experiments together according to, various different crises that you might be experiencing. It's a series of various different lists, quick start options for, are you, do you have this particular issue? These are the experiments that you might want to look for. Or is this, how much time do you have? These are experiments according to the amount of time that you have, the complexity levels that you might want to look for, et cetera, et cetera. Various different quick reference charts. So you can select experiments by time or problem type, or, do you need an experiment for remote teams or in-person teams, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, what I found
So
really interesting about that is some books do that sort of thing, but most of the books I've read that do that always put that at the end. It's like, here's all the content, like here's all my brilliance. Now, if you want to apply it, then at the very end, it's like, okay, now, and you kind of flip it and start with that. It's almost like very reader slash audience in mind. Like before you even get to the content, it's like, here's what you need, here's what you should we do, and it was, and you've got, it's not just like a couple, like you've got a lot of different situations and scenarios that I think are very relevant to, like what if your product launch is failing, or what if you need to like, fix this issue, you got, your teams are remote like you said. So I thought that was really nicely done, how it's like you lead with, here's the value for you, and here's, I guess the whole thing is about saving time, right? It's like you don't need to read the whole book. If here's your problem, read these things and then get moving. And was the
yeah,
52
exactly.
intentional? Like was the 52 number intentional to make it a year, or was that just kind of a happy accident?
Yeah, I thought about when I first was thinking about writing a book, to be quite honest, my first thought was, what is a book that I could write really quickly? I will be completely honest with you,
Huh?
Avi. I mean, I was like, what is a book I could write in 3 weeks? Okay, that did not happen. And I came up with a whole bunch of different ideas, 25 tips, 30 blah de blahs, 36 yada yadas. And I landed on 52, and I really liked that for a number of reasons because, yes, one per week for a year. I really liked that. It divides very nicely into 4 sections.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked that. So yeah, just for a number of reasons. And also it ends up being a very robust number. It's not like a pamphlet.
Yeah.
It's a solid book.
Yeah,
So
it's
it ended up
solid
being,
also without being overwhelming. I think the fact that it is like
yeah.
52 in the year like doesn't feel like, oh my god, I'm going to be reading this book forever. It's like, all right, here's um it's very funny though. I had the exact same thought with my book. When I first started writing a book, I don't know, there's a speaker, I don't know if you're familiar with, who I love. He's a friend, he's great, named Mark LeBlanc, and he's got this little book. It's skinny, it's small, it's like 100 pages, and he goes around and talks to speakers, and he says, you don't need a big book. This little book has got me more business because it just summarizes what he does. It's like 7,000 words. He's like, you could write this in a weekend. And I kind of had the same thought. I'm like, yeah, I got to stop overthinking this book thing. Let me just. And then the more I got into it, kind of like you, it's like, no, I don't want to write. I don't want to write a short book I can write in a weekend. Like I want a useful book that's got depth, and it would have been so much easier to write that short book.
Right. I mean, maybe my next book will be the short book. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I really tried to write a short book, but it didn't come out that way. So maybe the next one will be the short one.
Yeah, it's we all say that, and then you get into it. You're like, oh, here's my. I think that's a difference though when you've got these creative improv minds. Like once you think of one idea that go in the book, three more jump in, and then three more jump
Right?
in, and yeah, I think the more like linear, technical, analytical people are like, oh yes, I'm just going to write about these three things and be done.
Well, I tell you, I mean, really what happened with me, Avish, was that I just kept asking, how can I make this valuable?
hmm
And, first it was just like, okay, here's the 52 micro experiments. And then I thought, it really needs an introduction. Like it's just going to look like a blog post.
Yeah.
If I just put out a book that's just 52 micro experiments, it needs to be more than that. So I kept asking, how can I make it more valuable? How can I make it more useful? And I kept thinking about my ideal reader, who's not just a reader. I mean, it's not, as you said, it's not a book that you sit down and read. It's a book to be used. It's not a
hmm
book that you read, you put on a shelf and you forget about it. It's a book that it's going to be like dog-eared and sticky noted and used. Ideally, the entire team is going to be using it, and everyone on the team is going to have a copy. And somebody different is going to be leading a different micro experiment every week, and maybe everyone in the organization is going to have a copy, and it's going to be used over and over again all the time.
hmm
So it's not a sit and read kind of a book. You don't. It's not a read from beginning to end kind of a book. It's a, what experiment do I want to run this week? Let me find it, and then
Yeah.
put it down. And what experiment do I want to run next week? Let me pick it up and find it, kind of a book. So I had to keep thinking, what is going to make it more useful and
hmm
more valuable? And I kept and it wasn't from a place of how do I pad it. It was from a place of what is going to be helpful for my ideal reader.
Yeah. It, it's funny. It was such a similar journey because I was similar with mine, and I even first read and made notes from a book whose title is "Write Useful Books." Was like this kind of. I don't know if you read that book, but that was like a manual I used.
No.
It's like, yeah, it's literally the title is "Write Useful Books." That was one of the things I used to model my book, and I had the same thought, and I don't think mine's quite as like hands-on application based as yours. But that was still my rubric, and it's so funny because I think the folder in my Google Drive where the kind of the top level folder when I started writing this book still says short lead gen book. Like that was my thought going into it. It was gonna be a short lead generating book, but like the more useful I want to make it, the more I'm like, well, I need this. I can't just do that. Um, Now I want to get into the usefulness. I want to talk about some of the sections and experiments. Before I do that, just real quick, you had mentioned, how is this going to help my ideal reader? And who have you kind of defined as your ideal reader for this book?
Yeah, my ideal reader is an executive in a tech company. It doesn't have to be a tech company, but that's really sort of like my center of the bullseye of the target. A SaaS company, a software company, uh, who has been handed an innovation mandate. The CEO has said, we need everyone to be innovating more. It's your job to make this happen.
Hmm.
And they need help
Yeah.
to make that happen. So it's not necessarily a learning culture. It's not they have innovation as a value in the culture, but they don't actually have a culture of innovation. So they need help
hmm
making that happen. And so they're like, okay, now what do I do? And so they pick up the book and they'll use the book to help start building that foundation. Little hint, one of the first parts of that foundation is psychological safety.
hmm
And the micro experiments will help with that. I mean, you really need everyone in the organization to be on board in order for that to happen. But if you really start integrating these micro experiments in throughout your organization, it will create a sea change.
Yeah, and I could definitely see that happening. And I like the fact you made them so short. Otherwise, like you said, if it was like, oh well, once a month you got to get everyone together for half a day, it's like no. But
Yeah, I
this is a
mean,
great way to
believe me,
kind of make it.
I love leading those half day and full day workshops. I love doing it, but the challenge is the frustration also as a facilitator is I I love leading the workshops, but if the organization doesn't do something to maintain what you do in those long workshops, the transformation ends. I
Yeah.
mean, there is no transformation. It's a fun, really invigorating day, but transformation happens over time. It
Well, that would
doesn't
also, I
happen.
think, I would assume that would be another great use for this book, as they would bring you in to do that half day, full day retreat, but then give everyone a copy of the book. Like, look, Melissa's given us the foundation, helped us play, helped us feel what this can be like. Now let's use the book to do these micro experiments to keep it going and build on it so we actually do implement and keep learning.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, the book would be part of a larger program
Mm-hmm.
where would they would have the book would be used on a regular basis, be incorporated throughout, and then they would bring me in, or could be somebody else, but ideally it would be me, right?
Yeah. It's your
And
book,
they
your
would bring me
process.
in,
It should be you.
they'd bring me in and pull people out for. It doesn't have to be a half day. They could bring me in to do, a brief intervention of some sort on a periodic basis so that to keep sort of reinvigorating and re-injecting and also coaching people through because although I do incorporate, as you saw in the book, some scripts to help people facilitate the micro experiments, we both know that facilitation is not the same thing as just following a script.
Yeah.
So bringing me in to help their leaders, learn how to facilitate the micro experiments would be really beneficial as well.
Oh,
So there's lots of ways. I have different packages uh, that organizations can work with me to bring me in and help infuse uh, all of this whole concept throughout their organization.
okay. Yeah, that is great. So let's get into some of the content. So it's basically your sort of three-step create the impossible framework with a fourth section, which is literally create the impossible. So you really so what we talked about last time and kind of been the foundation of your work has been this three-step create the impossible, and so you kind of expanded that. Uh, so why don't you let's just start and just give us the quick overview of that framework?
Yeah, so my framework is Create the Impossible framework is three steps. Play hard. So the concept of play hard is it's to just let yourself try things, experiment. Just when you think back when you were a kid, you uh, you didn't do things for rewards or money or gold stars. Imagine when you were a little kid playing in a sandbox. You would just ask yourself, what would happen if I did this?
Mm-hmm.
That's the concept of play hard. Just let yourself try things and make messes. Which brings us to step two, make crap. Now, intentionally use rather provocative language for
Mm-hmm.
the steps of my Create the Impossible framework. But I love this step. This is maybe my favorite step, make crap, because through the process of adulting, we all learn to show up very masked up, showing up as our excellent selves at all times, and that everything we create has to be excellent, has to be perfect at all times. The problem is, if we don't allow ourselves to make crap, if we don't allow ourselves to fail, if we don't allow ourselves to, be mediocre, then we never get to the good stuff. We need to make the crap in order to fertilize the good stuff.
Yes, that's a great metaphor.
So that's the concept of make crap. Uh, have you ever had a photo shoot?
Yes.
You know that your photographer takes a bazillion snaps, a bazillion photos, right?
Mm-hmm.
Out of those photos, there's maybe a handful of really good ones. The
Yeah.
rest are trash. You don't want anyone to see the rest, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they're terrible. Your eyes are closed, your tongue is sticking out or something. The photographer is not waiting until, I don't know, you are have your face arranged in the perfect way before they click the shutter because they would never get any good photos.
Mm-hmm.
They have to just let the shutter go a bazillion times. That's the concept of making crap. Photographers understand this inherently. They just hold the shutter down and go. That's the concept of making crap.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got play hard, we've got make crap, and then step three is learn fast. Turn every experience into a learning opportunity, into a growth opportunity. So we've just played hard, we've just made crap. Now, what are we going to do with that? We're going to take all that data, every experience that we just had, and say, okay, what can we learn from this? So often we get a lot of lip service around that
Mm-hmm.
from organizations, but the learning doesn't actually turn into anything. So the learn fast step is about now we're going to take everything that we experienced, all the good stuff, and especially the bad stuff, and we're going to actually turn that into data, turn that data into learning
Mm-hmm.
and move forward from that to something better and something, something new and something better. And this is an ongoing repeating cycle. So we're always in one or more steps of this create the impossible framework at all times. And if we are constantly thinking really mindfully about being in one or more of these steps at all times, that will inevitably lead to breakthroughs and innovations.
Yeah, and I love it. And obviously, I'm biased because someone with an improv background as well. I'm talking about I talk a lot about dealing with change and innovation and things like that. So I 100% agree and endorse all those things. And I like how this is in this idea of creating the impossible, which now that was like the framework, but in the book you've got a whole fourth section, which is literally just create the
Create the
impossible.
impossible.
So talk to us a little bit about that. Like, why did you decide to kind of break that out into its own thing, beyond just the three steps of the framework?
Well, I mean, obviously there was just sort of the logistical fact that there are four sections to the book.
Mm-hmm.
I have three steps of the framework. So how do I square that circle?
Yeah.
Uh, so that it's just sort of made sense from that perspective. Um, so I turned that fourth section into a section on, so each of the sections is structured around one of the steps of the framework. And so the fourth section, create the impossible, is subtitled Building Innovation Habits.
Mm.
And so the executive challenge there is that innovation initiatives so often fail because they depend on these special events or inspired moments rather than systematic capability building. And that's what the book is really about, is about, building the habits
Mm-hmm.
through these micro experiments. And the problem is so often breakthrough thinking stays episodic instead of embedded in daily operations. So what
Mm.
we want to do is really use these micro experiments to embed creative problem solving into daily workflows and sustain momentum beyond that initial enthusiasm that can come
Yeah.
from, those fun workshops that we do, right? And build long-term innovation capabilities.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I also think it kind of feeds in, like you said, you talked about culture and how like you build that culture around it, and psychological safety. I came across this quote years ago, and I have no idea who did it. And I've Google searched, and maybe I'm just making it up. Maybe I should just say it's mine now. But someone, and I thought someone did research on this, but they said that the most um, desired quality in an employee by an employer is creativity. The most rewarded trait in an employee is compliance. And
Mm,
so it's kind of like exactly what you're saying. Like they say, innovation mandate, and we want you to be more innovative. But then they don't build the culture and the habits. It's not part of the system. And in fact, you've probably seen this. Like when an employee does get creative and maybe makes crap, instead of being like, "Hey, you made crap, good. What can we learn from it?" They get like criticized or
yeah,
told they did something wrong.
yeah, yeah. exactly. Yeah, and I know I've read so many case studies and stories and about companies where, terrible, horrible things have happened, like planes have crashed,
Hmm.
things like that. And the reason that those things have happened is because of a culture where speaking up is shamed, right? And
Yes.
so people don't speak up because they don't want to get shamed. They don't want to get sanctioned.
Hmm.
And that ends up with, 300 people dying in a plane crash because the co-pilot is afraid to speak up to the pilot.
Yeah, and that's the extreme, like,
Yeah.
yeah. But even just on a day to day, people lose jobs. You just completely undercut your
Yes.
innovation because, yeah, that all comes back to what you started with, which is psychological safety. Like, if people don't have that, um, and this book is great. Like you said, we'll build it. So let's get into this. Let's get into a few of the things. We don't have time to go through all 52. But I want to kind of go through, maybe talk about one or two, depending on how much time we have, of each one. So I kind of pulled some of the ones that I resonated with me or that I thought were particularly interesting. Probably biased, the ones either I really like, oh, I like that, or I have an interesting story about too. But this is not about me. But all right, so in Play Hard, and if there's any you particular like, oh no, I really don't want to talk about this one, we can talk about that as well. Um, I really like the one bold ask. Because I talk about something similar, which is like, what is your one bold step? Your one, like, it doesn't need to be giant, just one step. So could you tell us what you mean by one bold ask and just kind of give us a quick, like, what that micro, because I think also people listening maybe are a little confused about what you mean by micro experiment. So
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
kind of explain what that is.
Yeah, so just to set up what the how the book is structured, each micro experiment has little sections inside of it. So first of all, it explains how much time to sort of estimate. So for example, one bold ask, I say estimated takes about 10 minutes. Um, Team size 3 to 12 people, although I give examples for how you can adjust it for different scale team sizes. Uh, and and then I say the innovation killer for this particular experiment. For this one, teams are really hesitant to make requests that could accelerate progress, which creates these hidden bottlenecks and leaves really valuable resources unexplored. So the experiment itself is to ask each person on the team, what is one bold request that you could make this week that feels uncomfortable,
Mm-hmm.
but could move our goal forward faster? And then you have them identify their specific ask and commit to one request. So, some examples are requesting executive time, uh, cross-team resources, external partnerships, budget adjustments, or process changes. So they might be requesting any of these things. Those are some examples of
Mm-hmm.
some of big asks that people might make.
And
And the reason that this works is research from Harvard Business School shows that people consistently underestimate other people's willingness to help
mm-hmm.
by 50% or more because there's this fear of rejection that creates these artificial constraints that limit our access to resources and limit our opportunities for collaboration. And bold asks can often unlock these permissions or partnerships or support that seemed impossible, but they just simply were never requested.
Yeah, and I gotta say, for a lot of people, and perhaps myself included, that one idea and that one statement that people underestimate others' willingness to help by 50%, that one line is probably worth the price of the whole book. um, because it's so true that we are just so afraid to ask, what if they say no? What if they think I'm being rude? What if I'm putting them out? And I don't know if you experienced this. We both are launching books. Yours, a couple weeks or a month or so ahead of mine. And part of that process is reaching out to people to do advanced readers, maybe leave reviews. And I would feel that
Yes.
I don't know. And I was telling the guy I'm working with my launch, that every time I'd get a reply, my heart would be like, get a little extra thump. Like, what if this is, what if they're like, leave me alone, or I can't review your book, or why would you? I'm like, but every single time it was someone saying something very positive or nice. And if they did say they couldn't do it, they're usually very kind. Like, oh, I'm so
Yeah.
sorry. I'm just so swamped. I can't. And it just goes to the heart of this point that I do. I know everyone just if you just switch that and started doing bold asks, like it could be innovation as a team, as an individual, could just like that is such a great. I think that's why this one jumped out at me is because I was like so related to it, so passionate about it.
I'm so glad you spoke about this one because it's really interesting because I have the same, you and I like, oh, we're
uh,
so,
it's that like insecure performer thing. You seem so confident on stage, but you're like, I don't know.
oh
Should I
my God,
ask him?
I have so much of that same insecurity, and I think I had a lot of insecurity about even putting this in the book.
Really?
Yeah, like oh, nobody's gonna relate to this. Meh. So yeah, I'm really glad that that spoke to you.
Yeah, and I think anyone listening now could do that. I mean, obviously they should read the book, but right now, just I
Yeah,
in my language I might say like, what's your one yes and going to be, right? Like, what's your one little yes and? But it's the same thing. It's like, what's the one bold step? So, all right, that's great. So and all right, so that's kind of the play hard section, right? We're gonna just have fun, like, and I think that's a big piece of it, right? It's a bold ask. It feels nervous, and if it was like in a business success book, you probably put a lot of pressure on yourself. But since it's in the section on play hard, it's like just play. Like don't put so much pressure.
yeah,
Just ask
yeah,
and just be playful about it.
yeah.
So I think that's great. All right, let's talk about make crap. I want to talk about one micro experiment from there, and for all of them, I've written down like three, but I don't want to go into trying to figure out which one. Which one? I think the one. Well, all right, we'll start with this one because I feel it's the most related to what I do in improv, and that is the constraint challenge. Uh, and I write about constraints as well, so that's why this resonated with me. So this is where I believe in this experiment, you actually create an artificial constraint, as almost a way of like a thought experiment.
Oh yeah, experiment 26. Yeah, so this one you take your current challenge and you add an artificial constraint that forces creative problem solving. I love this because it's like I mean this is like some of my favorite improv games.
Yes.
Like slips of paper when you're in an improv scene and there are slips of paper on the ground that people have written random lines from movies or books or
Yeah.
things on, and you're playing a scene and you're improvising, and then at any point you just randomly pick up a slip of paper and that's your next line of dialogue, and you
Mm-hmm.
somehow have to justify how that makes sense when it's totally unrelated to what you've just said.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. So this is very similar. And as creatives always, we know that constraint is one of the most powerful ways to unleash creativity. So again, take your current challenge, add an artificial constraint that forces creative problem solving. So here's some examples. Solve this with only free tools,
Mm-hmm.
or design this for users who have never used technology, or build this with a team of 3 people, or create this solution using only things available in a hardware store.
Mm-hmm.
And then you spend 10 minutes designing within the constraint. And as improvisers, you and I know that you could do this by asking your team to invent new constraints on the fly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's
Do this underwater, or do this where everybody has to be standing upside down in order to use your product. Or I don't know, just have fun inventing constraints, and that would add another layer of fun to the whole thing.
yeah, and again, even though it's the make crap section, it's you carry through the play hard,
Yeah.
and so many people who are not like practiced in how to like in improv or creativity, they think the constraint is going to limit their creativity. But if you've done improv, the every short form game rule is a constraint, right? Like the
Yeah.
blind line, which incidentally, I'm familiar with that game because that is my keynote closing exercise. I do blind line with the audience, so it's a lot of fun.
I love it.
I close every keynote with that. It's great fun. And if you ever do an improv, like if you do more artistic improv, they have a thing called an open scene, which is like two performers just take the stage and just start improvising. And those are so much harder because you have nothing to bounce off of, and the constraint,
Yes.
like, and once you learn that, you realize, wow, that's like the cheesy line, like every problem is an opportunity. It's like, no, but every problem is a constraint that you can then use as like a launching point for your creativity. So, I I love that exercise and and it is such a simple little experiment. And I love how you say, make it fun. So because the temptation, I'm assuming, for someone is going to be like, all right, let's start constraint. Well, how can we do this with 50% of our budget? Like, ha ha ha, which, is fine constraint to play with. But throwing in the random things like, well, how would we do this if we, couldn't communicate in English? Or how would we do this if we were underwater? Or, like, just it makes it fun and opens up creativity. That's
Yeah.
terrific.
And I was just thinking, like, every time you get on stage as an improviser, if you invite the audience to give you a suggestion, that's a constraint.
Yes.
If you walk on stage and you just start, you're s- that's like you said, that's terrifying because there are no constraints.
Yes. It's like the blank page is the hardest to paint on or write on when it's
Yes.
totally blank. I would like, because I've talked about constraints as well, and I would say, look, if I tell me a story, you'd be like, If I say, well, tell me a story about a dog, you'd be like, maybe. If I say, oh, well, tell me a story about a dog who gets lost and needs to find his way home, like, oh, okay, now I can go. It's like, all right, well, tell me a story about a dog who gets lost, needs to find his way home, but comes across a dragon. Like, oh, like each
Exactly.
suggestion constrains the story more, but that makes it so much
It
easier
gives
at the
you a
same time.
path.
Yes, it gives you. That's exactly it. So, uh, all right, fantastic. And we are kind of coming close to the end, but I do want to touch on a couple more things. I want to talk about one that just, well, two real quick, and you can pick which one or maybe touch on them both in Learn Fast, just because they sort of made me laugh, and I just love the idea, and they're so random. I love Emoji Retrospective, and the idea Tinder. I thought were very 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 clever, and I could see a group having a lot of fun with those. So, could you explain one or both of those?
Yeah, so retrospective. So this one works really well if you're in a virtual setting.
Mm,
You could do it either way, but so it's super simple. You ask team members to summarize the last sprint or project or quarter or whatever using exactly three emojis. So no words are allowed initially, and you just give everyone some time to choose their emojis really thoughtfully, and then you share all the emoji combinations without explanation. And you look for patterns across
mm-hmm.
the visual stories before discussing what the symbols reveal. And that's it. That's the whole experiment. And the reason why this works is that visual metaphors bypass our verbal defenses and they reveal, just like any kind of art or music, they reveal emotional truths about our experience that traditional questions will often miss. And emojis create this kind of psychological safety
Mm-hmm.
while they also can surface some real issues because they feel really playful rather than confrontational, but they also capture really nuanced feelings about team dynamics.
Yeah, and I
And
love I love the let's look for patterns, right? So it's not like we're gonna go
Mhm.
around. Okay, Bob, why did you pick the angry emoji? And Sheila, why did you pick the crying? Like, it's like, I know, let's just look. What's the common theme? You're not calling anyone out. Um, and it's also a fun twist because a lot of management techniques will be like, all right, well, first we got to start by taking the temperature of the room, and the way a lot of people do that is by asking, like, how is everyone feeling
Right.
right now? And people don't want to speak up. Like you said, without psychological safety. But this is a fun way for people to be like, well, let's put it up there. And that just tickled me, and I could see that being really fun and very, very useful. All right, since I mentioned it real quick, could you just give us what this will be our last one? What is Idea Tinder?
Yeah, yeah. So, uh, okay, so each person writes an idea on cards. It could be physical or digital cards, and then you review them one by one, and you make choices by swiping right to keep, just like Tinder,
Mm-hmm.
or left to discard. There's no middle ground allowed. And you just set a timer, like 10-minute timer, and sort through all the ideas by swiping. And then you review the discarded pile afterward and ask yourself, is there anything worth reconsidering and re-swipe?
Yeah, and in the book you say it's because like forcing people to make a binary decision, like really hem and hawing. Oh, let's rank this on a scale of 1 to 10. It's like, nope, you got to decide yes or no.
Yes, exactly. It eliminates that analysis paralysis and it
Mm-hmm.
really helps to reveal people's true priorities. And the speed constraint also is really helpful. It prevents overthinking and it helps, excuse me, it helps access intuitive judgment about the quality of ideas. And it also helps surface genuine enthusiasm as opposed to, that polite consideration.
Yeah, it's and what I like about this is the way you and I think and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the bonus goal is if people go through and do the experiments and follow the book, then they'll kind of it'll become more ingrained, and then the book will just be there as like a reference, but they can start because what I love about this is it'd be easy to say, oh, we're gonna vote on the ideas, yes or no, and it's like, all right,
Yeah.
that keeps it real. But by labeling it as Idea Tinder and we're swipe like that adds that playfulness to it. And I
Yes.
think a lot of the experiments are like that, where they might just be variations on games or techniques people have done, but the way they're traditionally done are a little too serious, a little too boring, and this just adds
Yeah.
so much fun and creativity to it.
Yeah. And I mean, as you know, that I would call this sort of improv light. Like a
Mm-hmm.
lot of these are not as involved as some of the more improv activities that I run with teams when I am brought in to work with an organization.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't require a lot of improv facilitation skills for people to facilitate, but there's and they're very similar, or
Yeah.
identical to a lot of activities that people may have seen before, but they have a little bit of a layer of playfulness that is really helpful for building psychological safety. And again, it's so much of this is about just really weaving it into the culture so that it becomes part of who they are and how they identify. And hopefully they can start developing their own games. And
Yeah.
there are micro experiments, as we call them, because we know that companies tend not to like the word game.
That's a fair point.
But they can start building their own and creating a whole new library of micro experiments.
And as you were explaining one of them, I forget which one we were talking about. I realized that probably something important. These don't have to be, in fact, should not be one and done. It's not like because there's 52, you might be like, all right,
Yeah,
well, we already did the emoji one, so now we got like, you can come back to these, and it
yeah,
almost becomes like, it's like Emoji Monday or whatever it is, like the first Monday of the month, we're
absolutely.
gonna, because yeah, it's
Yeah,
not just like a
absolutely.
one and done, and then you gotta move on. It's like no, just go back to them, people, and people get familiar and play more and get more and more playful each time.
Yes, absolutely, for sure.
That's fantastic. All right, well, Melissa, this was great. And we've only talked about 4 of the micro experiments in the book, and there are 52. And there's the guides in the beginning about based on what you're trying to achieve or what your challenge is, which experiments work best, or based on time or number of people. Like it is really a very useful, well thought out book. I think anyone who does have an innovation mandate would definitely benefit from, and anyone who even if you don't have a mandate, if you just want to add innovation at work, as is the appropriate title of the book, that would be great. I'm going to finish up here in a moment with a final question. Before I do that, let people know where they can find out and get the book, where they can learn more about you and how you work with teams and organizations, and any place you want people to connect with you?
Absolutely. So you can find the book at innovationatworkbook.com, and you can download a free preview at innovationatworkbook.com/preview.
Mm-hmm.
And you can find me at melissadinwiddie.com and also on LinkedIn at Melissa Dinwiddie.
Okay, we will link to those, but for people who might be listening while driving or going for a walk, how do you spell Dinwiddie?
Thanks for asking, Avish. Dinwiddie is D as in David, I-N as in Nancy, W-I-D-D as in David, I-E.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Melissa. I'm going to leave you one final question. I don't know if you remember this from last time, but I end every podcast episode by asking, by first telling people that, I talk about yes and, as you know, and because I honestly believe the world would be a better place if everyone just started with a default mindset of yes and instead of yes but. So what is one small thing that you believe that if everyone did differently or better, it would make the world a better place?
I love this question. And I now I'm so curious what I said last time because I
I
can't
don't remember either. I
remember.
got to go look it up too.
But this is a small thing, but it's a huge thing. If everyone would, okay, so the next time you notice yourself feeling judgment about someone, like, oh, that person is so fill in the blank. If you could step back and get a little curious. And the reason why I say that is because I'm going to tell you a little story. When I was in high school, I remember I became friends with a couple of girls who were a year behind me. And I remember walking with them one day and them saying to me, "Wow, you're so nice. All last year, we thought you were the biggest snob." And I was mortified
Mm-hmm.
because I was really shy and really quiet. And they thought I was a huge snob because I was so shy and quiet. And they judged what they perceived as snobbishness, but what was really me just being incredibly reserved and
Mm-hmm.
quiet and shy. And that always stuck with me. So whenever I am around other people that from the outside look like they're being really snobby, but are, I think, I wonder, maybe
Mm-hmm.
they're actually really shy, maybe they're really uncomfortable, maybe they're socially awkward. I try to get really curious. And I have extended that to, other ways of being, to try and step outside, try and get really mindful, try and get really aware, and get curious instead of judgmental. And Avish, if everybody would do that, I think the world would be a completely different place. And it's a small thing, but it's actually a really huge thing because it's really hard to do because it takes a huge amount of awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that I really challenge myself to do. I'm not I'm not perfect at it by any means, but that's my thing.
That that is a great answer, and I agree 100%. And what's interesting is if you build that habit, curiosity is also a direct line to creativity and innovation. So it sort of
Absolutely.
serves both purposes. Well, Melissa, thank you for that answer. Thank you for coming on the podcast and for this great book. To everyone listening, go check it out, innovationatworkbook.com and innovationatworkbook.com/preview to read a sample. And you get all the links. Melissa, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming back again. And who knows? Maybe we'll do a third time soon.
Thank you so much for having me, Avish.
You got it. Thank you.